Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast. Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 5th of November. I'm Caroline Hepker in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, Zohran Mamdani wins the election to become the next mayor of New York City as Democrats chalk up big wins across the United States.
Stocks drop as investors wonder if long-running concerns over lofty tech valuations have now become a market reality.
Plus, why AstraZeneca's CEO is willing to compromise when it's for Donald Trump.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Zohran Mamdani has been elected as mayor of New York City as Democrats secured decisive wins in votes across the United States. Mamdani won just over 50% of the vote, while former Governor Andrew Cuomo garnered 42% and Republican Curtis Sliwa got 7%, with 88% of ballots counted. During his victory speech, Mamdani pitched his win as a moment of change for the country, as he sought to single out what he called the billionaire class.
We refuse to let them dictate the rules of the game anymore. They can play by the same rules as the rest of us. Together, we will usher in a generation of change. And if we embrace this brave new course, rather than fleeing from it, we can respond to oligarchy and authoritarianism with the strength it fears, not the appeasement it craves.
Zohran Mamdani will be New York's first Muslim mayor and first person of South Asian descent to lead the city in its 400-year history. His win capped off a night of sweeping victories for the Democratic Party as it seeks to turn the page on the presidential election defeat to Trump. Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and Abigail Spanberger in Virginia both won their races for governor, and in California voters approved a ballot initiative that will redraw the state's congressional district map to give Democrats the opportunity to win a handful of additional seats.
Now, global stocks have fallen on concerns that lofty valuations are overstretched, with mega-cap tech firms leading losses. The selling pressure wiped $500 billion off the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index and a Bloomberg gauge tracking Asian chip stocks. Now, the growing slump is leading investors to question whether long-running concerns will finally bring an end to the bull run that started in April. Here is Ekaterina Bigos from AXA Investment Managers.
Now, what is the catalyst for some of the recovery and quicker recovery? Clearly, market are watching first evaluations, some indications of potential revenue crystallization on some investment. But importantly for U.S., we're looking at the Fed. So Fed has been part of the narrative of why we've seen that correction to some degrees. Right. People are concerned is, will the Fed cut in December? And of course, at the meeting that they've had last week, they put it into balance. It wasn't kind of a clear guidance that they're actually going to do it.
Ekaterina Bigos speaking there after Wall Street chiefs, including Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon, warned that a significant market pullback is now increasingly likely.
The US government shutdown is now in its 36th day, making it the longest in history. As the entrenched standoff between Republicans and Democrats over healthcare and spending priorities continues, the economic pain is deepening. The Congressional Budget Office estimates the shutdown will cut fourth quarter growth by as much as 2 percentage points if it continues for 8 weeks, followed by a short-term rebound early next year. Even then, the US economy would lose billions in output.
Here in the UK, the Office for Budget Responsibility is poised to lower its estimates for UK productivity by 0.3 percentage points. It means a hit of as much as £20 billion for the Chancellor Rachel Reeves ahead of this month's budget. Meanwhile, leading think tank, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, has warned that the Chancellor needs to run primary budget surpluses to get a grip of the country's, quote, unsustainable debt trajectory in their view. Meanwhile, the Chancellor is meeting top insurance CEOs today in a bid to try to increase investment into the UK. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, says the government's economic strategy is working.
We had the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first half of this year. We've had hundreds of billions of pounds of investment, 5 interest rate cuts. But we're really clear that there's a lot more to do and that we've got some big challenges we're facing. And those big challenges that we're facing now are what the Chancellor is going to take head on going into the budget this year.
James Murray speaking there. Attendees will include representatives from Lloyd's of London, Hiscox and Swiss Re, according to the Treasury.
European Union countries have reached a preliminary deal to reduce emissions by 90% by 2040 compared with 1990 levels. It's a key milestone on the path to reaching net zero by 2050 as consensus over climate action has fractured. Bloomberg's Mikhail Kubala has more.
It took more than 15 hours of negotiations. Now, Bloomberg has learned that EU environment ministers have reached the basis for an agreement, which is due to be adopted in the coming hours. The deal came after member states secured assurances from the European Commission. They include trade protections for steel and language on technical neutrality, a term often used to open the door to more nuclear power. The compromise will still need approval from the European Parliament, but will allow the EU to submit its new climate pledge to the United Nations, all as world leaders gather in Brazil for COP30. In Brussels, Mikhail Kubala, Bloomberg Radio.
And lastly, WhatsApp has introduced a standalone Apple Watch app messaging on its platform, or rather making messaging on its platform easier for wearers. The software includes features such as call notifications, voice messages and full-length text previews. A Meta statement described the release as just the start of enhancing the WhatsApp experience for Apple Watch users and said that additional features are planned for the coming months. So those are our top stories.
On the markets today, we're looking at the equity sell-off continuing in Asia. The MSCI Irish Pacific Index down by 1.2%. The Nikkei in Tokyo 2.9% lower. The Kospi in Seoul 3.3% lower. Suppliers to Nvidia particularly in focus. The likes of Advantest in Japan down by 7% in trading today. European stock futures firmly in the red too, down 0.7 for Euro Stoxx 50 futures. And on Wall Street, Nasdaq futures are pointing also lower, down 0.4%.
Well, in a moment, we'll bring you more on the US election results and also how the boss of AstraZeneca approaches his relationship with the Trump administration. But before that, we always like to think about food. It's almost breakfast time, isn't it? I might not be eating chocolate for breakfast, but maybe.
I mean, we should all think about it, quite frankly. I think it could make the start in the day much easier, if not necessarily particularly healthy. But this is to do with the rising cocoa prices, a story we've been reporting on for some time now, but also how chocolate makers are adapting their recipes in some cases to use less cocoa. Bloomberg opinion columnist Laura Williams has been writing about this. She went to Amsterdam to meet some of them, as she describes, the real-life Willy Wonkas who are coming up with their own operations to try, and or own creations rather, to try and use less cocoa. So she tried the brownies made by OFI, which is a food ingredients business, uses 1/5 less cocoa than normal, and Laura says tastes infinitely more chocolatey. So perhaps this could be the future.
Well, there's been this huge controversy in the UK because not only have we had shrinkflation when it comes to, you know, chocolate products, chocolate biscuits and so on, but also some that have actually now can't call themselves chocolate because they don't have enough chocolate content in them, because there are rules around that labelling here in the UK. But yes, I think given, you know, the price increases that we've seen for cocoa, people are trying lots of different things, aren't they? But it's a very nice story. We'll put a link to it in our show notes. That is from our Bloomberg opinion columnist Laura Williams.
Well, let's bring you more now on the US election results. Zohran Mamdani winning the race to become New York City's next mayor, while the Democrats also scored wins in gubernatorial votes in New Jersey and Virginia. We've got Bloomberg Daybreak editor Mark Perrier with us for more on this story. Mark, let's start with Zohran Mamdani then. It was as polls had predicted. What won it for him?
Good morning. The focus was very much on the cost of living, and I think that really captured the attention of a younger electorate in the city. I think younger voters really turned out for him. I think that really supported him. And also his opponents in the race. You know, one has to remember he had already beaten Cuomo in the primaries. So not a surprise win, but definitely a resounding one that will send waves through the political sphere in New York and beyond.
Yeah, and it was also a three-way race in some ways. So Andrew, you know, some people saying that actually Curtis Sliwa maybe split the vote effectively.
Exactly.
Also, though, a lot of challenges perhaps lie ahead. Mamdani made many big promises.
He's got huge promises to fill free buses, more affordable housing, turning city-run grocery, creating city-run grocery stores. These are massive promises, and also the fact that he wants to tax the wealthy in order to pay for all of this, I think will make him somewhat less attractive to Wall Street, to the Wall Street players in the city. He's got to build coalition here. And in his acceptance speech, it was very much a populist message. It was very much about changing leadership. It was about toppling a political dynasty. That's what he said. So I think he's got to obviously he's got to work on his policy platform, but I think he also needs to work on coalition building as well. That will be key to his success in the city.
And we should mention as well, Mark, that Michael Bloomberg endorsed Andrew Cuomo in the mayoral race and had donated to a super PAC committee supporting him. Bloomberg, of course, the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, which is the parent company of Bloomberg Television and Radio. But I wanted to ask you as well about some of the other wins for the Democrats, New Jersey and Virginia, as well as the redistricting vote in California that passed as well. How significant are those wins? And what does it tell us about the momentum behind the Democratic Party as we look ahead to next year's midterms?
It does re-energize the party, and they certainly did need it. I think this injection of energy will propel them in the next year. And obviously, the whole message is around affordability. That will be, I think, their platform going into the midterms. They'll definitely play on that, on the cost of living crisis in the U.S. And again, looming in the background, the shutdown, which has hit 36 days. So it's definitely, I think it may play in their favor, but it really depends on their strategy and how they approach the electorate with it.
Yeah, very interesting. And also that there was a reaction from President Trump on social media. Trump wasn't on the ballot, and shutdown were the two reasons that Republicans lost elections tonight. That was the quote from President Donald Trump on Truth Social. Thank you so much, Mark, for being with us today. That is Bloomberg Daybreak editor Mark Perrier. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this.
AstraZeneca's CEO Pascal Soriot has turned the British drug maker into a cancer drug powerhouse, the largest company on the London Stock Exchange, and a business that has compromised rather than criticised US President Donald Trump. Joining us now to discuss, Bloomberg Health reporter Ashley Furlong on her reporting into the company and its culture. Ashley, good morning. How has Pascal Soriot then handled the Trump administration and its agenda in the pharmaceutical space?
So he's taken the threats from the administration incredibly seriously, and he's really prioritised getting a deal done with Trump. And Pascal Soriot's presence was really key to that. He was in almost every meeting. He was described as really constructive. Soriot told us that he compromised in the end, and it wasn't what AstraZeneca originally wanted to do. But I think it really shows this pivot from this British drug maker increasingly to the US, to what is their key market and what will be their key market for growth of their new medicines in the years to come.
Indeed. Soriot, though, and you pointed this out, he's been a lot less outspoken about the Trump administration when it has challenged science.
Yes, that is very true. And to be fair to him, we have heard very little from drug makers in general. But Soriot essentially told me, that there wasn't actually an impact to the company at the moment from these cuts. And what he was concerned about was, early career researchers and available positions for them. But there's also been, criticism of how drug makers have kept quiet on what is a massive attack on established science and these big cuts to public health in the US. And we have heard very little direct criticism from drug makers on that. And obviously they rely, a lot on the Trump administration as well. So we can sort of see that relationship playing out there.
Another part of your reporting, Ashley, for this piece has been Pascal Soriot's influence on AstraZeneca's company culture. Tell us more about what you learned.
So we heard that he, when he came on in 2012, had a really big influence on, everything from, ensuring that the science was really presented to the world, making sure that staff were going to scientific meetings and staff were presenting their papers in, high-impact journals. And we also heard that it's a really high pressure, intense environment to work where performance is, really constantly monitored. And, if you have a poor presentation in a meeting, your career at the company could be in jeopardy. So we heard it can be a very difficult place to work as well.
Yeah, and so then there is attention on what would happen to AstraZeneca post Pascal Soriot.
Yes, that is obviously the big unknown question. He is 66. He's been at the drug maker since 2012. He will be leaving at some stage. He sort of told us that, that will be, he won't be here for 10 years, but he wouldn't give a figure of, he wouldn't say whether he'd be here for 5. I think the question is whether there's sort of key man risk, and some think that they will be. He's been really key to remaking the drug maker, and he's also created, to his credit, a really skilled staff beneath him. So I think there's also optimism that those people will be able to carry on and bring the drug maker, continue to sort of increase sales and continue on the trajectory that the drug maker is already on. But there is also concern that this sort of pervasive oversight that Pascal Soriot has over the drug maker, without him, it will be a very different place, let's just say that.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.